We're in Perek Tetvav. We are just a few psukim in, and what we've been focused on the last period of time, I'm just going to ask everyone to please mute your phone if you're not actually speaking, because any motion that you make actually takes over and causes distortion on the line. So if you could just try, that'd be helpful. Thank you. So that's not to deter people from communicating and participating, chas v'shalom. It's just for technical reasons. Okay. So we've been talking a lot about the Brit Bnei Mitzrayim, the covenant between the parts. Today what I'd like to do is two things. Number one is to continue our discussion about trying to figure out the timeline of exactly when the Brit Bnei Mitzrayim happened. It's not such a simple question. And that's because we have traditional sources, we talked about this already last time and the time before, that indicate that the Brit Bnei Mitzrayim might not have actually happened at the exact moment when it is printed in a Sefer Torah. It may have been something that happened previously that is inscribed in the Torah over here. And just to give you, if you will, one last piece along these lines for consideration, the truth is, when I get to the second topic of today, which is the main thrust of the discussion, we'll see that we're also going to be still somehow talking about this chronology question. Let me tell you what I mean by this. I'd like you to just think about take that back. I was trying to share my screen with you, and it just blinked out as I was trying to do that. This may not be possible today. Okay, well, let's see what happens. We had talked about the approach of Rashi and the approach of the Baalei Tosafot. They're on the same side, which follows in line with this work from the time period of the Tanaim called Seder Olam Rabbah. What Seder Olam Rabbah endeavors to do is to show us the timeline of how and when everything happened. You can find a modern day edition of this if you open up an art scroll Chumash, and you'll see at the end of like Parshat Noach or Parshat Shmot or something, or Vayechi, it'll tell you like the timeline, who was born when and who was living in whose time frame. And that's very good. That's one of the ways that we can see it sort of charted out. But that's based on the chronology that the Torah gives us of when things happen. One of the issues that I want us to take away from our learning together on a methodological level is the understanding that some aspects that are conveyed to us, details or elements that may not be extraneous details. They're details, but they're part of the broader story. They inform our understandings of stories. May not be as fixed as we would have otherwise thought. And one of the examples is when we talk about the chronology of what happened in Sefer Breisheet. I'm going to make another attempt right now to see if I can connect us and share my screen. A minute. Okay. Okay, I cannot share my screen today, apparently, which is really unfortunate. The only way I could do that is if I hang up and start this whole call again. Never mind. I'll just tell you what it says. In Sefer Shmot, we saw the Ramban there. We looked at it extensively, and the Ramban had discussed the idea of how to work out the chronology of keeping things in order, meaning when we see a story in the Torah, that's when it happened, unless we have some overriding evidence within the Torah itself that tells us otherwise. We should assume, sort of Occam's razor, what's written in the Torah is in the order in which it happened. So we had seen that, and we looked at the Ramban's way of approaching the 400 years from the birth of Yitzchak. How did we get to 430 years? So it was calculating, it was figuring out the time period they spent in the desert. It was an approximation. Does anyone remember this? We saw this last time. That was the Ramban. That was last week. I wanted to share with you, unfortunately not able to, it seems, today, to show you the text of it, because I can't do screen sharing because I did an update on my computer. I don't know what's going on. But the Ibn Ezra basically says the following. I'm reading you verbatim on my screen. You just listen. I won't read you the whole piece. I'll tell you what it says. But he basically says, on the pasuk in Sefer Shmot, if you have a Sefer Shmot in front of you, it's chapter 12, verse 40, pasuk mem, where it describes the Jewish people were 430 years. That's the language that's used in the Torah. The time period the Jewish people dwelt in Egypt was 30 plus 400 years, 430 years. The Ibn Ezra tells you something different, which is this. We have a lot of calculations and times mentioned in the Mikra, means anything in Tanakh, and we do not know what the beginnings and the ends of those times might be. Let me give you some examples, says the Ibn Ezra. And the first example that he comes up with is from our Navi Shir on Thursdays. We're learning now in Navi, for those who are not with us, on Thursday mornings at 9:30. We're in the middle of the story of the rebellion of Avshalom, a sad and tragic tale. The way that begins is with the words, Vayihimiketz arba'im shana. And so it was after 40 years, Vayomer Avshalom, and Avshalom said. And the question is, 40 years from what? This is the moment when Avshalom comes to see his father, David HaMelech, and he tells him, Dad, or rather, Sire, I have to go. I made promises to Hashem that I was going to give korbanot. I want to give them in Hebron. I'm going to Hebron right now, and I want to give them. So it was after 40 years that he said, 40 years from what? It's not the 40th year of David's reign, is it? It's 40 years. He's in the last year of his reign. He only reigned for 40 years. Is it that Avshalom is 40? Is it that it's 40 years from the time that Aron Kodesh got to Yerushalayim? And Ibn Ezra knocks them all out. He says, well, no, Avshalom was not 40 at this point. And this is not the end of David's Malchut. So some say it's from the moment that the Aron Kodesh was in Kiryat Yarim, and then once it came to Yerushalayim, some calculation there. There are a lot of examples like this. And the Ibn Ezra, the great scholar and sage that he was, gives you all sorts of examples from throughout Tanakh about where this is true, or we just don't know the beginnings of various times of things. In other words, it'll give you a period of time has elapsed. Why is it telling you that? It's part of the style of the way the Torah speaks. You shouldn't think things are happening in a vacuum. But he says not every calculation of numbers really adds up exactly in a way that you can necessarily understand it. And so he says the following, which is a very beautiful idea. And this is germane to our topic. He said, you know how you can reconcile the fact that the Torah in Sefer Shemot says 430 years with the reality that Avram Avinu was told to beat a bit of a B'Turim 400 years? Ibn Ezra says, no problem. The clock of 400 years was only going to start from the birth of Yitzchak. That everybody agrees, and you can do the math. We've done it a few times, not to belabor the point. From the birth of Yitzchak till Yitzchak is 400 years. Says Ibn Ezra, no problem. You know when the 30-year clock began previously? Simple. When Avram Avinu arrived in Haran. Remember, look in our Chumash that we should have each of us in front of us. Breisheet chapter 15, verse 7. Hashem says, Ani Hashem, I took you out of Ur Kasdim. You know when I took you out of Ur Kasdim? 30 years ago. So when Avram Avinu was 70 years old, says the Ibn Ezra, he came to Haran. How long did he live in Haran? 5 years. When he was 75, Hashem told him, now go to Eretz Canaan. So the Ibn Ezra basically says, when is Brit Ben Abitarim happening? Not like Seder Olam Rabbah wanted to argue when Avram Avinu was 70 years old and there's some kind of chulent with the sequencing of things. Rather, Avram Avinu is exactly as old as he should be. He's about to, at this moment, he's somewhere between age 75 and age 100. He's going to have his son, Yitzchak, when he's 100 years old. Follow? So that's on the birth of Yitzchak till Yitzchak Mitzrayim, that's 400 years. How do you come up with 30 years? Ibn Ezra says it's written in Sefer Breisheet. It says, God said to Avraham, whenever he said it to him, listen, my friend, I took you out of Ur Kasdim. Says the Ibn Ezra, when did Avram come out of Ur Kasdim? 30 years before his son Yitzchak was born. Therefore, I say it with the thumb of the base medrash, since Avram Avinu left Ur Kasdim, that means that his journey to Eretz Canaan in a certain way began when he left Ur Kasdim. He stopped in Haran. He stayed there 5 years. What was he doing there? So most of the Mefarshim say he was teaching. The Rambam describes he was makil kihilot. He put all sorts of people together. What are you talking about? There's one God. He's not an object. He's not a statue. He's not the sun. He's not the moon, right? He's not the ocean. He's God, and he's beyond, above and beyond all of this. He transcends time and space. He's all powerful. By the way, he doesn't have an ego. He doesn't have emotions. He doesn't have jealousies. Blah 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 blah. It's all the things we know. 5 years. Then he heard the voice. Hashem told him, "Go." He got up. He went to Eretz Canaan. When Hashem spoke to him, he told him, "I'm the God who took you out of Ur Kasdim. When you'll be," he didn't tell him the age, but you'll one day have a son. That's Doa Teda. You should know. Ki Geria Zaracha be'Eretz Lohem. There'll be strangers in a land that is not theirs. Avram Avinu was a stranger the minute he left his birthplace of Ur Kasdim. He was a stranger in Haran. He was a stranger, even though he was promised it for the future. He didn't actually command, we've seen already, a little city-state. He didn't have like a fortress. He had an army, ad hoc, and that was it. He disbands them, it seems. You never find out again that Avram Avinu is prosecuting wars against anybody. Ibn Ezra says, okay, fine, so that's your 430 years. Like, what's the big tzimus? You don't have to start with calculations. 430 years means the Brit Ben Abitarim happened before the story at the beginning of Parak Tet Vav. It's an elegant answer, and it actually also solves for, the Ramban, I don't want to say it in an impolite or irreverent way, Chas v'Shalom. The Ramban is struggling to figure out, like, how are you going to figure the extra 30 years? Oh, well, they were in the desert another 40 years. Yeah, but that was on account of their sins. Yeah, but God knew that already. Yeah, and the Torah was written. The Torah is not written as a diary entry. The Torah is written in a retrospective manner. Ergo, Moshe Rabbeinu writes it at the end, or he's writing in a serial manner, whatever it is. But okay, so there could be a pasuk that was put in. And what's that pasuk? In chapter 12 of the book of Shemot, verse 40, the Jewish people spent 430 years in the land of Egypt. The people had left Egypt, but Egypt had not left them. They took the people out of Egypt, didn't take Egypt out of the people. How do I know, by the way? In year 40, Parshat HaShavua, Parshat Chukat, what's their complaint to the Jewish people, to Moshe and Aaron? You took us out of Egypt to die here. We would have rather died like our brethren had died. It's 40 years after you left. You're still dreaming about Egypt. How sad. How sad. So the Torah records in chapter 12, verse 40, they didn't fully leave Mitzrayim 430 years. Now the Ramban says 430, 440, calculations here and there, whatever it is, yeah? 10 years here, 10 years there. I'm not exactly doing justice to the Ramban, but it was along those lines. So that's Ibn Ezra. And Ibn Ezra answers for this question. Now, one mystery I have, I don't know the answer. The Ramban generally was aware of the Ibn Ezra. I don't know, he very often engages the Ibn Ezra. He lived after Ibn Ezra. Ibn Ezra died in 1164. The Ramban himself wasn't born until 1194. So they didn't really overlap in time, but we have many times when Ramban writes, Katav Rabbi Avraham. He means Rabbeinu Avram Ibn Ezra. And Moshe Ibn Ezra actually was really his official name. Anyway, so that's the Ibn Ezra. That's the first thing I just wanted to say, sort of in closing, on three different approaches. We have Rashi, Ramban, and Ibn Ezra to try to understand this chronology. But I want to show you, because the question could be asked within the world of Rashi. How is it that Rashi, you kind of have to justify it. I left this as an open-ended question. And it's a great proof for Ramban against Rashi, which is there's no indication between verse 6, Pasuk Vav, and Pasuk Zayin in Sefer Breisheet. Now we're staying with Sefer Breisheet. We're not going to move again from Breisheet. Chapter 15, verse 6 to verse 7. There's no paragraph break. It doesn't say anyone went anywhere. So to argue it's her 30 years earlier, that's what Rashi and Bali Tosa wanted to argue. How could you possibly say that? It's the next pasuk. But I thought of the following. I don't know if it's correct or not, but interesting. Pasuk Zayin, we said already. Well, you could argue, well, it's kind of introductory, but if God is talking to Avram Avinu, why did he reintroduce himself again? He said to him, I am Hashem, who took you out of Ur Kasdim, Latet L'chai Eretz, Haaretz Hazot L'Rishta. But look at the next pasuk. Look at verse 8. Now we're picking up stakes to look at verse 8. Vayomar means Avraham said, We read this as the words Hashem Elokim. Hashem, my God. Bama eda ki irashena. Bama eda, excuse me. Bama eda ki irashena. How will I know that I will inherit it? We'll analyze it. Just look stylistically. You see it says Hashem Elokim with Aleph Daled and then a Nun and a Yud and then a Yud Kei Vav Kei is right after it in verse 8. There's only one other time that I'm aware of that Avram Avinu uses that language. Turn back, chapter 15, verse 2. Vayomer Avram, same language. We read it again in Shul as Hashem Elokim. That's our tradition to read it that way. But you understand? If these are the only two times Avram Avinu spoke this way to Hashem, you could say the title is times that Hashem said something to Avram Avinu, and Avram Avinu's response was Hashem Elokim, and then a question. And if that's the title, then here are two times that happened. The more recent one is Achar Dvarim Ha'ela, after the war between the four kings, the five kings. And Hashem came to Avram Avinu in a vision, and he told him, I'm your shield. You have a lot of reward. Avram said, Hashem Elokim. It's a unique language. You don't find this language too often in Tanakh, that it should say that two times, that Hashem's name appears like that. Hashem Elokim. And then verse 8, Vayomar. God, in verse 7, Hashem said something to him. He told him something. What was that? I am the Lord your God who took you out of Ur Kasdim. And Avram's response is, Vayomar, Hashem Elokim. Now, I'm ruining more and more that I can't share my screen with you because of the next thing I want to share with you, which is the following. The Gemara in Masechet Brachot. I guess will be like the olden days of learning before there were books. They said to listen to the rabbi and hope that he was remembering correctly. You're a little more of a better place with this because I'm actually reading directly verbatim. The Gemara in Masechet Brachot on Daf Zayin Amud Bet says, Amar Rabbi Yochanan Mishum Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai. Miyom shebara Kadosh Baruch Hu haolam, lo haya adam shekar'o laKadosh Baruch Hu Adon ad sheba Avraham v'kar'o ukra'o Adon. Shenemar vayomar Hashem Elokim bama eda ki irashena. So Rabbi Yochanan quotes in Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai that the first time a human being ever called God the master of the universe with the words Aleph, Dalid, Vav, Nun, which means master, that it would say it that way in the Torah with Aleph, Dalid, Nun, Yud, as opposed to another name of Hashem, was Avram Avinu. And when was the first time that Avram Avinu ever called Hashem by this name? The Gemara says the proof text is chapter 15, Pasuk 8. Is everyone with me? Because I don't want to lose you now. This is complex stuff. Okay, so the Gemara says, Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai is quoted by the later Chacham, Rabbi Yochanan, saying, the first person in human history to ever call God master. There were other names people had for God, but master, but with the word letters Aleph, Daled, Nun, Yud, that was Avram Avinu. Now, it's not my question. It's the Baalei Tosafot's question. Wait a minute, said the Baalei Tosafot. Hold your finger here, chapter 15, verse 8. Flip back to chapter 9 in Breisheet. 9 or 10. Oh, yeah, 9. Chapter 9, verse 26. Who's the speaker? Noach. What does Noach say? He says, Baruch Hashem Elokei Shem. Certainly the way we would read it is Baruch Ado Shem. We would say the Shem Hashem here. We don't read the Yud Kei Vav Kei, we read it Aleph Daled. So the Baalei Tosafot ask, wait a minute. Doesn't say Baruch Hashem Elokei Shem, meaning Avram Avinu was the first one to ever call God the master of the universe? Seriously? You have the Baruch Hashem Elokei Shem. And by the way, I have another question that Tosafot didn't ask, which you and I could have asked. Look at page verse 2 in chapter 15. We just looked at it, you and I, just now, right? Chapter 15, verse 2. It actually says, Vayomer Avram Hashem Elokim Aleph Daled Nun Yud. You see, it's the same words. So say the Bali Tosfot, Yesh Lomar, Dehatam Ein Ba'alav Dalet Shu Lashon Adnut. When it said it in the book in Sefer in Parshat Noach, that Noah said to his son, Baruch Hashem Elokei Shem, blessed is God in the tense of Shem, so that was not using Aleph Dalet Nun. It was another name of Hashem. Not that one. Not Aleph Dalet. So if you'll say, wait a minute, so I answered that question. Meaning, when other people like Noah spoke about Hashem, they didn't call God the master, Aleph Dalet. They called God something else. The first one to call God the master of the whole universe was Avram Avinu. Say the Bali Tosfot, wait a minute, what about chapter 15, verse 2? You see where this is going? That's Hashem Elokim, but it's Aleph Dalet Nun Yud, Mati Tein Li, what will you give me? I am barren. That happened right before. Answer the Bali Tosfot. Now watch this thumb, because this is the thumb of the Beis Medrash, and this is the thumb of QED for Tosfot. Shaparshiot v'yesh lomar shaparshiot lo ne'emru kaseder ve'ein muktam umuchar b'Torah. V'zeh pasuk b'Bnei B'tarim haya kodem lachein. Say the Bali Tosfot. You see, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai quoted this pasuk as the first time that Avram Avinu ever used the language of Hashem as Aleph Dalet Nun Yud, the master of the universe. You know why? Because it was the first time. Because the Torah is Ein Mukdam Muchar B'Torah. It's not in chronological order. And this parsha, here's your proof from Shimon Bar Yochai. Now, so you have Rabbi Yosef Bar Chalafta, one of the students of Rabbi Akiva. He wrote the work Seder Olam Rabbah that makes this claim 30 years prior to when Avram Avinu was 70, is the brief returns in Seder Olam Rabbah. Now you have Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai saying the same thing, say the Bali Tosfot. And that brief Torah must have happened earlier. And then we say, V'chein tzarich lomar al korchach, the shehare Avram haya ben shivim shana b'ben b'tarim. He must have been 70 at brief b'tarim. Okay? Now, and Achar Dvar Meila was after the war of the kings. Now, I have something else to say, which because we cannot share screens, I will not say, but if you're watching this shir or listening now and you want to see it afterward, and you're an intrepid sort of person, go look at Tosfot to Brachot Daf Zayin and Bet. There's another piece there, which is astounding, and to my mind, seems to blow up the whole possibility that what the Bali Tosfot is saying is correct about it having really happened when he's 70. But the Bali Tosfot that Brim B'Turim was when he was 70. But I won't go down that road now. It's too labyrinthine, and if I can't show you the visual, that's going to get lost. But what do we see here? Just from the words Hashem Elokim, I said it, but Derech Hapshat, the fact that it's the only two times that I'm aware of that Avram Avinu uses the language of Aleph Dalet Nun Yud, followed by the letters Yud K Vav K. That syntax. So the title is, here are two times Hashem and Avram Avinu spoke, conversed, dialogue, where Hashem said something, and Avram Avinu's response was to address HaKadosh Baruch Hu as Hashem Elokim, the Lashon Aleph Dalet and Yud K, those two names of Hashem, juxtaposed one with the other. Tosfot said, I'll tell you something else. This actually is a proof to our view, Tosfot and Rashi, their view together, that really the Brit Bnei B'Tarim happened when Avram Avinu was 70 years old, 5 years before everything that we've read from chapter 12 and onward. Let me pause here in case there are questions, comments, input, argumentation, and the like, and then we'll move on.
You can't not tell us about what the argument of the Tosafot is that explodes this after we've been listening to this. So please tell us.
Remember that you asked. I hope you're not going to regret it. I hope everyone else won't regret it. But, okay. The Bali Tosafot go on to say, Ein mukdamu meuchar b'Torah means that there's no earlier or later in the Torah, means that, first of all, as we've been saying, Brit Bnei B'Tarim happened, Avram was 70. But the calculation of the Bali Tosafot, which I'm happy to share the math with you now, renders the reality for the Bali Tosafot that the war between the 4 kings and the 5 kings that Avram Avinu fought in, Avram Avinu was 73 years of age. So I have no idea how they could have made this claim. And how, I mean, I know what the math is, and I know what it
Are you saying that the war with the kings is before God tells Abraham to go to Eretz Canaan? Because that's at 75.
Right. Didn't I just say before? It's like so labyrinthine and crazy. It's very hard to, I mean, crazy. I shouldn't say, who am I to say? The Bali Tosafot. They basically say the following. The Bali Tosafot say, we know that the Gemara tells us in Masechet Shabbat that Sdom lasted for 52 years. What does it mean it lasted for 52 years? From the time they put the sign up and said established in, and they put the year, 52 years later, Sdom was already a wasteland. That's what the Gemara says. So I don't know what that means either. Let's just take it at face value. It literally lasted only 52 years of being this lush paradise. Lahavdil, there's a city in America that was once brought up out of the desert to be a place of some kind of gaming and gambling and I don't know what, mamish out of the desert, created. So this is Lahavdil, what they did. And what happens in Sdom, it stays in Sdom. It never stayed in Sdom. And in the end, it got, right, the whole thing got blown up, quite literally. So the Gemara says it was 52 years. Okay. Is that a historical statement? It literally was only 52 years old. That's the whole thing. But what it turns on then is, if it was all of 52 years old when it was destroyed, and we know the math goes like this. I'm going to read you what Tosafot say. Take out the 12 years that Sdom was servile to Kedar LaOmer, and then add the 12 years plus the 13 years of the rebellion. And now again, I don't know how far deep you want to go into it. Chapter 14 actually begins by saying that 12 years, these city-states, the 5 towns of Sdom, Amorah, etc., they paid tribute for 12 years, basically, to all the Mesopotamian kings, known as the 4 kings, Kedar LaOmer and all of the others. Nimrod is among them. His name there is Amraphel, Amarpol. Then the Torah says 13 years they rebelled, or in the 13th year they rebelled. So if you say it means in the 13th year they rebelled, so then the years of the story in chapter 14 are 12, 13, 14. Year 12, that's 12 years of serving Kedar LaOmer and the others. In year 13, that was a year of rebellion. In year 14, they all showed up. But some of the Mefarshim read it as, no, 12 years they served them. Another 13 years they rebelled. And in the 14th year, that's when they all showed up at the war. Now, how do they do that? Because if you look at chapter 14, verse 4, it says, 12 shana avdu et Kedar LaOmer, u13 shana maradu, which most of the Mefarshei Hapshat understand as they served for 12 years, and in the 13th year, they rebelled. And then verse 5, uve 14 shana ba Kedar LaOmer, in the 14th year, right, that's when Kedar LaOmer and all of the other 3 kings showed up. But some of the Mefarshim read it as 12 years they served and 13 years they rebelled. So if you think about that, 12 plus 13 is 25, plus the other they showed up, that's 26. And when you figure it out, so you have another 26 years that Sdom stayed with peace. How old was Avram Avinu when Sdom was destroyed? You know exactly how old he was, because Avram Avinu we know is 100. When he gives birth, has the birth of Yitzchak, remember? And that was 1 year after the angels came to Sarah Imenu in the tent and told her and Avram Avinu, you're going to have a son next year at this time, which means that when the angels came, Avram was 99. And we know that the story in Parshat Vayera, the angels come, visit Avram and Sarah in the tent, give the news about Yitzchak's birth, and then where did 2 of them go promptly? To Sdom, to destroy it. So Avram Avinu was 99 at the time of the destruction of Sdom. So if he's 99 at the time of the destruction of Sdom, and we know that there was a 26-year period that Sdom was calm out of 52 years, then it must be that 26 years before 99, Avram Avinu was already fighting this war. So if you take out those 26 years of serenity, that Sodom had following its war, you figure out Avram Avinu must have been all of 73 when he fought the War of the Kings. Im Kain, if so, then Parshat Bnei B'Tarim was before Parshat Achar Dvarim Ha'ela, 3 years before it when he was only 70. And therefore it ends with Vayachshavel Lo Tzedakah. And therefore it mentioned it B'Meida, that it was B'Meida Kirishana, that really it's 3 years earlier. If we see it this way, and he adds in, the Rashbam, otherwise the Rashbam says that's the answer on the level of Pshat. Even the Rashbam, who is into Pshat all the time, the Rashbam, I don't think we have Rashbam on this section of Breisheet. I'm not aware of whether we do. Rashbam we only have some of. Rashbam was a commentator, he was a grandson of Rashi. We have some of him on later on in Breisheet. I don't remember that we have him this early in Breisheet, but Tosafot quotes Rashbam. He was one of the Balei Tosafot. He was part of that generation. The Rashbam says, if you look at the beginning of chapter 15, it says that God told Avram, go outside, count the stars. Ergo, it's dark outside. But later on in chapter 15, the Breisheet and Mitzrayim, suddenly it's going to say, here comes the nighttime. So how could it be nighttime and nighttime? It's already nighttime. Then it says it's nighttime again. It sounds like it was day again. So how could that be? It must be Shnei Parshiot. They didn't happen at the same time. There's no Mukdam and Muchar B'Torah. But why do I think this whole thing is blown up? How could Avram Avinu be 73 years old, be fighting the war of the 4 kings and the 5 kings? Why did he fight that war? Anybody remember? He went to save Lot. Remember? He went to save Lot with my thumb. Where was Lot? Living in Sodom.
Right, so he wouldn't know. He wouldn't know if he was in Haran, what was going on. He wouldn't necessarily know.
More than that. It says specifically in chapter 14 that when the Palit, when the survivor comes to tell Avram Avinu that he has some relative who's been taken, that Lot was taken, it says specifically in verse 13, chapter 14, verse 13, that Avram lives in Elonei Mamre.
Right, okay.
Elonei Mamre is in Hebron.
Right.
How could he be living in Elonei Mamre in Hebron? I thought, okay, maybe he was in Haran. They came to Haran and told him, your nephew was taken. But wait, why was his nephew in Sodom? Because Avram and Sarah and Lot went down to Mitzrayim. Remember? Why did they go to Mitzrayim? Because there was a famine. Why was there a famine? We don't know. But God made a famine at the exact time that Avram, Sarah, and Lot arrived in the land of Canaan. So if Avram and Sarah and Lot went to the land of Canaan, and then they went down to Egypt, then they came back from Egypt, that's black on white, chapter 13. And we know when that story happened, it says Avram is 75. It said at the beginning of chapter 12, he's 75. So it says in chapter 12, he's 75, he came to Canaan, he went down to Egypt, that was the end of chapter 12. Chapter 13, he and Sarah and Lot come back from Egypt. They have a lot of stuff. Lot says, I can't, not Lot. Avram Avinu says, I love you, we can't live together. You pick one direction, I'll pick the other. And Lot chooses to move to Sodom. If Lot's living in Sodom, and we already know that Avram Avinu is 75, so that has to be in sequence. So when the Palit shows up, and the Palit then says to Avram, hey, your nephew was taken prisoner, it says Avram is living in Elonei Mamre. So in order to reconcile this and say that Avram Avinu was 73, when the war between the 4 kings and the 5 kings happened, it's a very nice idea, but you're going to have to make a cholent of everything else that happened before. A cholent, there's nothing else to say. You'd have to argue, and I don't think it adds up. I really don't think it adds up. And, in case I haven't already shown my hand, like, some of these chronologies, again, I'm not arguing chas v'shalom against the Ikari Amuna. I want people to understand. No one should misunderstand what I'm doing over here when we're making these analyses. We're not treading in the world of halacha. We're in the world of agadata, which is to say we're in the world of the homily, the interpretation, number one. Number two, there are mafarshim on all sides of this, and no one renders a psak halacha. So you could say, I like the Ramban better. I like Ibn Ezra better. I don't know what Rashi's doing. I don't know what the Balei Tosafot are doing here. That's fine. That's fine. Eilu ve'eilu divrei Elokim chayim. That's totally legitimate. But I'm struggling within their view. I'm trying to show, to reconcile for myself, how did the Balei Tosafot say that Avram could have been 73 in the war of the 4 kings and the 5 kings? It would have to be that when Avram Avinu originally came, he was 70. God made a covenant. He came on his own volition. God made a covenant with him. He moved around in the country. He was living in Elonei Mamre. In Elonei Mamre, his nephew and he weren't getting along. There was too much stuff. The whole thing is too convoluted. It's too hard for me to understand. Was I right, Shelley? Is that like blow the whole thing up?
Yes.
So again, I'm stymied.
Yes, you did.
I tried
really
and
good.
here to like look up.
Where did the 52 years come from? Where did the 52 years come
the
from?
Gemara makes this statement in Masechet Shabbat on Daf Yud Amud Bet, Daf Yud Aleph Amud Aleph. Why does the Gemara say that? It just does. Again, is that some kind of a it's not an Ikar Emunah either. You know what I'm saying? And by the by, this whole thing in Tosafot turns on the idea that in chapter 14, verse 3, when it says 12 years they served them, 13 years they rebelled, it means literally after 12 years, another 13 years elapsed. That's 25 years. But you don't have to say that. You could just say, very simply, 12 years were they under the thumb, like Ibn Ezra said at the beginning of the Shir. That's why I put the two of them together. When did those 12 years begin? That the 4 kings from Mesopotamia were ruling over the people of the 5 cities of Sodom and Amorah and the other 3. When did those 12 years begin? I don't know. Whenever. The Torah doesn't tell us when. It just says for a 12-year period. When did the 12 years start? Who knows? Who cares? 12 years went by. They paid their taxes. And in the 13th year, they said, we're done. Or you want to regenerate 13 years, they're fine. But you'd have to, there are so many leaps here, you understand? The Gemara just makes this statement that it was all of a 52 years, 51, 52 years. How did it get there? Because the Torah uses the expression imalta na shama, and na nun aleph is the gematria 51, and therefore it was where he was going to Tzoar, which was right near Sodom, was founded na nun aleph years ago, as opposed to Sodom, which is 52.
Rabbi, methodology
like
shouldn't Peshat take preference over gematria or something in the Gemara? You got it Peshat in the text of the Torah. So therefore,
but the Pshat. Hold on, you're right. Except that the Pshat, it is not entirely. It doesn't unpack all the layers of what's going on. The Pshat. That's what we keep seeing again and again. Like at a certain level, you need some kind of understanding of how did Chazal understand what's going on over here. The question is, what's the weight and balance between Pshat and Medrash? Now, what's astounding, and we're going to end with this, and I thank you for that last remark, Shelley, because that's the best way to end. Look with me at Rashi. Look at Rashi. I know I'm not going in order exactly. In chapter 15, you know that what's coming next is Abraham asks Hashem, how will I know? By what right or what merit or privilege will I have that my children will be worthy of it? There are all the interpretations we'll skip for now. So God tells him what he's going to do to make this covenant. And here's our introduction to the covenant. We'll see this again when we start next time. But I just want you to see what's unbelievable about, on the balance between what's Pshat and what's Medrash. I just finished telling you, Rashi holds, like the Baalei Tosafot hold, like Seder Olam Rabbah, like Rav Shimon Bar Yochai, that this whole story of the Brit Mitzrayim did not happen now, but rather when Avraham was 70 years of age, in his first arrival in Eretz Yisrael, Eretz Canaan rather, without a mitzvah to come. He just was magnetically pulled. He came, God made a covenant with him. He told him, I'm the Lord your God, took out of Ur Kasdim. I'm giving you this land. Boom, they made a covenant. And Avram said, thank you, but apparently it's not today. It's not for a while. I'm going back home to where my dad and the rest of my family are in Haran. He's up in Haran. Then the voice comes when he's 75 and it says, Lech Lecha, now, go now. It'll be good, go. And Avram was thinking, like, I made a covenant with you 5 years ago, but you told me it's going to be for my children. So what? Okay, now watch what Rashi does. Verse 10.
Can I understand?
Describes that, David, please.
I'm not going to solve the problem, but I think I've got an explanation as to why the problem exists. And that's that all the years are given in round numbers, but life doesn't happen in round numbers. So there's rounding up and rounding down. And between the two of them, there could be enough of that to accumulate a couple of years of error.
The problem is God gave us the Torah. So you could say, and I accept what you say, the Torah rounds off the number. It doesn't give you the decimal points of stuff. That's the idiomatic, that's how you speak.
Yeah, we know that when they count people, it's always in round numbers of hundreds or thousands.
Right.
We know there's rounding. So
right. So you could say, though, the maximalists in this view in regard would say, no, the Torah said the number, it's exactly the number. Other Mefarshim say, the Torah is written in the language of human beings. The Gemara says, Dibur Torah Klashon Bnei Adam. So you round, right? And then it's exactly what you're saying. It's rounded, everything's rounded, right? But this obsessiveness with like fitting every detail and year and moment in and shoehorning it in, you have to take your scissors out, God forbid, and cut the Sefer Torah up and jumble all the pieces. It does not holding together. But look what Rashi does here in verse 10. Astounding, because you know that the covenant here between the parts is taking these animals and cutting them in half and making a space between them. Now look, Rashi explains right here. Chilek kol echad lishnei chalakim. Verse 10, look at Rashi if you have it in front of you. Writes Rashi, not as a laugh line. Rashi meant it. Ve'ein hamikra yotzei midei pshuto. The text of the Torah does not go out of its literal, simple, direct, pshat meaning. And when you read these words, in light of everything I just told you, you think, what are you talking about? Ramban was saying to Rashi, excuse me, it's a beautiful idea that the people in happened 30 years earlier, but the Torah should have told it to us then. There's no overarching reason why it happened. There's problems, I'll figure out the problems. The Torah is in order, it's in sequence. Unless there's some reason that the Torah tells us dates otherwise, our, so to speak, Occam's razor approaches, it's in the order that we were given it. Now Rashi actually writes right here, Ve'ein hamikra yotzei midei pshuto, means this is the pshat. This is the simple understanding. And he goes on to explain, because God was making covenant with him to keep his promise that he would cause the Jewish people's children, meaning the children of Avram Avinu, to inherit the land. On that day, God made a covenant with Abraham, which was this, saying, this is it. And the way of the people who made covenants, they didn't take out a sheet of paper and have two people sign it. They didn't shake hands. They had a ceremony to cement it in those days, with the convention of the time, which is to split animals in half, and the two parties walk in between the split parts. Who are the two parties? In this case, Avram Avinu and an emissary of Hashem, a pillar of fire. Done. But Rashi, everything I just told you about that happened 30 years earlier, that's not a medrash, that's pshat. And it turns out that in certain ways, the definition of pshat and the definition of medrash at a certain level becomes some kind of continuum between the two about where you want to put your marker between what's the literal understanding and what's homiletic, and where on that continuum you will fall. So Rashbam generally falls much more in the realm of pshat, direct understandings of the text as we understand it. Rashi, we would say probably, I think most of us would agree, falls a lot more on the continuum toward the world of medrash as not just an adjunct, but as that which informs the pshat and is fused to the pshat. In Rashi's world, though, in his continuum, he was the guy in the middle, the whatever medrash, and he tells you earlier on a programmatic statement, which we learned already years ago, I think, at this point, in chapter 3 of Sefer Breisheet, in verse 8, very famously, Rashi says, "Vani lo bati el pshuto shel mikra ula agada meyashever divrei hamikra davar davur al ofanav." It's chapter 3 in Breisheet, verse 8. Rashi gives you the only programmatic statement that he has, which is, I only came to give you the simple understanding of the mikra, and to any Agadah, which means a medrash, which will reconcile or solve for issues within the text itself. Things that are davar davur al fanav means things that are according to their character. It's based on a pasuk from Mishlei. Anyway, that's all we have time for this morning. I hope you enjoyed, and it wasn't too convoluted. To review, we saw the Ibn Ezra's, I think, elegant solution to the problem of reconciling 400 years and 430 years. We saw then the idea within Rashi, within the text of the Torah, just this little idea that I have about why the two pieces, if they aren't at the same time, versus 1 through 7, or 1 through 6, and then 7 through the end of the parak as two sections, what unites them is Hashem, Elokim, that language, Yud Kei Vav Kei, Aleph Dalet Nun Yud, and then Yud Kei Vav Kei, calling Hashem that way. It's only 2 times that I'm aware of that Avinu does that. So that's why the two of them are together. And then further along, the idea that that when we have the section of the Balei Tosafot telling us that really this concept of the Avinu is the first one to ever call Hashem the Adon, the master, is because it happened 30 years earlier. And then the idea that Tosafot also want to allege that somehow the war of the 4 kings, the 5 kings happened when Avinu is 73. It contradicts the basic understanding of the sequencing of things. Again, Tosafot must have some understanding of it. I wasn't able to understand. It's my failure. How the Balei Tosafot render that possibility is just 73. The Torah said he's 75, so he couldn't have gone back in time. It's too, for me even, it's just too convoluted. But ending with this idea that even Rashi says, the Mikra is not going to go out of his pshat. That's what the pshat Mikra is doing. And for Rashi, the notion of medrash is as an adjunct to understanding the pshat. And sometimes when there are problems in the pshat, the reconciliation is by making recourse to the world of medrash. How radical one wants to be in making recourse to the world of medrash, so that's very much in the eye of the beholder, not of general readership necessarily, but certainly in the eye of the beholder of the Parshan HaMikra and of the greats of the previous generations who had license to do this, and people who are adept at doing it and have the commensurate measure of Yirat Shamayim to do so in ours as well. Ad Khan. That's all we have time for today. Hope everyone enjoyed. I wish you all the best. Tomorrow, Soul the Siddur at 9 a.m. 9:30 on Thursday is our Shiur continuing in Navi, and other sundry Shiurim across the week. So look at your Shabbos announcements for all that.